Hi, Marbs here. It's time to talk Tony Hawk again. This time again, we're talking about the brand new Tony Hawk 3 and 4 remaster. And before we get into my review of the gameplay itself, I just wanted to share a few more thoughts about Tony Hawk in general. You know, it's interesting. I think in the action sports arena, Tony Hawk has done a marvelous job of being the cornerstone of this genre. And you know, I think that's a really crazy thing to say, because when you start to think about how many different versions of Tony Hawk there are, you know, I had to reach out to my good friend Gamer Ahamer and ask her to give us a little bit of an insight of some of the platforms that Tony Hawk has appeared on that she happens to have in her personal collection. Gamer Ahamer, take it away.
So who else is super excited by the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 game? I cannot wait to dive into it. I had to pre-order the collector's edition with the cool skateboard, as I pre-ordered Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2 and also got the cool skateboard. But these games right here, this is so amazing that they're continuing this. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4, now really growing up with the Nintendo 64, playing Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1 and 2, and then eventually 3 on the PS1, on the PS2, on the GameCube, the Xbox, playing all these fantastic games, just really shaping my love of certain games, and just absolutely killing it at that time with the music, just discovering all these amazing bands, just this crazy, like, pumped up music that really, like, stands out to this day, and I'm constantly thinking, where did I hear this song at? Was it in one of the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games? So just always reliving those childhood memories, that nostalgia, just shaping my love for skateboarding and everything else. I used to skate way long time ago back in the day, and this really did a tribute to that. So I will always be thankful for the Tony Hawk Pro Skater games and just literally everything that came out afterwards. And I'm really hoping for a Tony Hawk's Underground 1 and 2 remake as well. That would be amazing to see. And let's hope, because I also have this really cool store display banner of it, and it would be so cool to just add more and more Tony Hawk Pro Skater stuff into the collection.
Wow, I didn't know there were that many different versions of Tony Hawk, and I had no idea that Gamer Ahamer had so many different Tony Hawk pieces in her collection. That standee, geez, that was awesome. And I, like her, hope that they consider making some more Tony Hawk ports over to the new version. Now, as you saw in the video, Gamer Ahamer also got the collector's edition, and she did for PlayStation, and we compared notes. They're identical except for the physical version of the game, for those who might be wondering. So, let's get into my review of the game for Xbox Series X.
Now, first of all, one thing that everybody needs to know is that it is available on Game Pass. However, if you want all the deluxe content, you have to purchase the deluxe content add-on. However, should Xbox ever decide to remove it from Game Pass and you only own the deluxe content add-on, that does not give you access to the game. Should you have bought it in physical, obviously you can use the disc. Now let's talk about the bad, because honestly, I have a lot good to say, so let's just get the bad out of the way first. Number one, you know what? I'm really bummed about the fact that there's only 10 of the songs returning to the game. I am happy that one of them is Motorhead and another one's Alice in Chains. Unfortunately, you know, I found an interview where Tony Hawk said that it's the tradition of the game to introduce new artists. And yeah, I get that, and I suppose that is something to consider, is that they do want to infuse some new artists into the game, and I like that as long as that they fit. So far, the music has left me mixed. Now, the next thing, let's talk about the elephant in the room, and that's the campaign missing from Tony Hawk 4. Look, I understand how a lot of people feel about this, and yes, I would have to agree that it is not a true remaster of Tony Hawk 4 because the campaign is missing and the levels have been converted into 2-minute challenge levels. However, I think with the additional levels, such as Waterpark and Pinball, for example, I mean, they're giving you some extra content to try to ease that disappointment, I suppose you'd say. And I really think what what's cool about that is that, you know, it is following the 2-minute challenge format that has been legendary for Tony Hawk in the past. And, you know, it is the format that I grew up playing in, the format that I'm most used to. So that alone really, to me, is not a disappointment. It just is kind of a bummer that the campaign is gone. Maybe someday they'll decide to reintroduce it somehow. I'm not sure how they do that, but maybe that could happen. Now, another thing is the clipping. Now, I've heard a lot about this. You know, I gotta tell you what my position is on the remaster and the clipping. Look, you know, the original Tony Hawk 3 and 4 had clipping. The Tony Hawks previous to that had clipping. You know, clipping is something that, you know, I certainly would like it if that didn't happen, and some of the out of bounds and stuff. And I do think they will tune some of that as time goes by, and I do think that will be better. So I wouldn't worry too much about that today. You know, if that's still a problem in 6 months, then yeah, maybe we need to revisit my thoughts on that. But right now, I can live with it. Overall, you know, that's part of what you get in a brand new remaster, and the conversion to the Unreal Engine looks fabulous. If you compare this to what you had in the original game, one of the things you will notice is that we have new skaters, we have modern skaters, we have skaters that haven't appeared in Tony Hawk games before. And I think that's a really good thing, because that just goes to show that it is followed the sign of the times. Now, another really great thing is the tutorial. I thought the tutorial was good, thought it was well done, and I thought it was interactive enough to help you get back into the groove. Because let's face it, if you haven't been playing these kind of games, it is going to take a little while to get your muscle memory back and to really get good at it again. Now, the currency, yeah, everybody's going to talk about the currency. So the currency you win in the game, which allows you to buy in-game things. For one of the things that you can buy is Bam Margera as a skater. But there were some other add-ons that if you purchase the deluxe version and the pre-order, also yielded the wireframe Tony Hawk and the Doom Slayer and Doom Revenant. Now, I think that's also pretty cool. Also has a lot of the Doom music, which I think is pretty cool. And I do think it's a pretty cool fit in the game, okay? I wasn't sure what I'd think of this at first, but I gotta tell you, just seeing that, the laughter that went around the room of just the absurdity of the Doomslayer doing a 540 McTwist was just, you know, I can't even describe the hilarity of this. I gotta say, it looks good, and you know, that is the important thing here. And there is enough content to buy, but I gotta say, there are some skaters and some people I would have liked to have seen make a reappearance. And let's talk about the skating in the game. The controls are buttery smooth. I don't have any issue with the controls. The other thing I will tell you is there are a lot of assists, and there's a lot of different ways that you can play the game. And that's always been part of the beauty of Tony Hawk. And you know, I honestly believe that Iron Galaxy has made every effort to make this game the best that it can be.
So as we talked about in the review, you know, it is a great remaster of the game. I love the fact that they have converted it to Unreal Engine. I know a lot of people have complained about the clipping, but like I said before, there was clipping in the original Tony Hawk 2, so I'm not going to really complain that there's clipping in this remaster, but I'm sure over time they'll iron out some of the little things and make it a little smoother. Now, the Tony Hawk 4 campaign missing, yes, that is something that is different. So calling this a full Tony Hawk 4 remaster, not really. And you know, like I said in the review, some of the levels that have been converted into 2-minute challenge levels, I don't know that they necessarily fit so great, but I think that Iron Galaxy's done their best to try to make them work as well as they can in this format. And I do think that's part of it here. The format of using the 2-minute challenge format, which is pretty much the native Tony Hawk format, does lend itself to a lot of fun. And I think that's what we're going for here. And you know, I do think that it does take a little while to get back into the groove, but there is a good tutorial that helps you along the way. And I do think that makes the game more approachable for those of us who haven't played it in a while. Now, yes, some of the game, well, okay, all of the game pretty much is locked behind the, ability for you to execute the challenges to unlock the next level. Now, let's talk about that for a moment. And yes, I know that that's a bummer to some people who want to be able to play all the levels right away, but you know what? The reality is here, that was part of the charm of the original game. Each Tony Hawk game built upon the last one. So, in the end, I would say yes, this is a buy, and I'd say yes, it's a lot of fun. I'd say, is it perfect? No, I mean, certainly it's going to probably not check all the boxes for some folks on the Tony Hawk 4. I think Tony Hawk 3, on the other hand, is really great and very well done. Now, the additional levels, especially the water park and pinball, I think are really cool. And I do think that that's something that you're getting in addition to what you got in the original games. But I'd like to know more about what your favorite Tony Hawk game is and what you think about the brand new Tony Hawk remaster. My name is Barbs. Subscribe for me. I'll see you in the next one.